Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mind Matters. I've got a brilliant show lined up for you today. I have a very special guest on the show. He's an important person in my life. He's my brother from another mother, my best friend, John Peets, aka J-Tech. He's a successful sales manager, a DJ and a promoter. He's an avid gym goer, but most importantly, he's a brilliant father to his son Kai. John has had his struggles with depression, and as a friend, I've been there for him. Today, we're going to be unpicking how he's lived with his depression and how he's learned to make changes in his life to ensure he keeps it at bay. I will also talk about my experiences of living with loved ones close to me who suffer with mental health. We will be bringing so much value today. I'm sure that lots of you will be able to relate to experiences John and I will talk about. So, if you want to continue hearing more valuable information like this, give this channel a follow. By getting more listeners, it allows me to get more special guests and bring you more content. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So John, how's it going?
Well, not too bad, thanks Chaz. How about you?
Yeah, really good today, really good. Okay, so my first question is, how did you first discover that you were suffering from depression? Like, was this something that you knew, or was it something that was talked about? What made you sort of say, I need to get the help and realize what it was?
Very difficult to really answer, and I can tell you why. Because depression, I don't think is something you can pinpoint at any particular time. It's a progressive illness, if you want to call it that, or a mental state, or whatever you want to call it. So if you imagine with depression, and this is just from my experience, obviously, if you think of each day you have an issue, yeah. So any person who doesn't necessarily suffer with depression, they might snap out of some form of instance or whatever it might be, yeah. But if you think about depression, it's a progressive thing. So if you imagine yourself with a shovel in your hands, just say for example, you've got an issue, instead of you dealing with it there and then and tackling it head on or whatever it might be, if you have this shovel in your hand and each day you're shoveling into the ground, and the deeper it gets, and then before you know it, when you're looking up, you can't see the light, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
it's very difficult to actually pinpoint. That's the way you can describe it. So after many years, because I never really spoke out to anyone, you kind of get to this this situation where you think, is this normal how I'm feeling? Is it not normal how I'm feeling? Do people feel the same way I do or not? Because I'm not actually speaking about it, yeah?
right.
But at some points, all this pressure of negativity, if you want to call it that, gets so overwhelming that you think, I've got an issue. I must have an issue because this is not normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I kept things bottled up for many years.
And was that helpful?
Looking back on it, no. From my personal experience, I think if I maybe spoken out a lot sooner, I would have, come out the other side a lot quicker than I did. But I suffered mentally for many years, so I can't even tell you when it first started. But I'd probably say in my early 20s, really, where I would just bottle things up.
Do you think there was enough help around then back, in your 20s? Was there enough information for you to find and realize that, this could be what it was?
Back in the day, we are going back quite a few years now. The one access like we got now readily available. So, in the palm of your hands, you've got, your phone. We can easily go on the internet, look at things. You've got, just say for example, YouTube. You've got advocates like yourself.
Podcasts.
Advocates like yourself. We've got podcasts you can listen to. And all these things help. I didn't really have the resources then. And also I was in that mindset where I wasn't quite ready to tackle it, if that makes sense, you know. So, but yeah, in reality, I don't think I had the resources, because I think I would have maybe done a bit of research myself and maybe thought and pinpointed that I might actually have an issue which I need to tackle.
Yeah, I think I can remember, because obviously we've been friends now, I think something like 24 years. I worked it out earlier. I was like, Christ, that's like quite a long time now, isn't it, you know?
It's a long time.
And I was kind of remembering the first time that I'd realised that you were suffering, and that was that night we'd gone up to the nightclub in Birmingham. I think it might have been for New Year's Eve, and it was on that night that made me. And up until then, I absolutely had no idea. And from that night, I think that was kind of our journey to our gym days together when we first. I can remember saying to you, "Look, John, you can get through this, and let's sign up to the gym, and you know it'll help you massively." And yeah, I think that was the first time I knew about it. Certainly, you obviously were experiencing it way before. So, do you think gym is something that has helped you over the years?
The gym for me is a massive help. I can't express how important it's been to my life. You know, obviously just going to the gym and having a regular routine, holding yourself accountability to get up and better yourself, you know, keeps you in check. It helps sort of clear your mind to a degree if you've got any negativity in your head. Obviously, you'll probably back me up on that, in a sense of it does release the stress.
Yeah, feel good endorphins.
Yeah, and then as I've gone into it and I've progressed over the years with the whole gym side of things, that the health eating comes into it. So there's lots and lots of benefits that the gym has given me. You know, obviously I do thank you at the same time for dragging me to the gym, because I never went to the gym, but now I'm there 4 times a week even now.
Now it's your life.
Now it's my life. And yeah, I am forever grateful for what, you know, the gym routine is given me, because it has helped, you know, sort of refocus my mind and get me through some difficult times.
Yeah. And what's some of the other types of ways that you've found really helpful that have, over the years, that you've, you know, behaviours and habits that you found that have helped you deal with the depression?
I think communication with people. I know some people don't really like to talk, but I think I'm quite I'm very open now when it comes to my issues. I never think it's a weakness to speak out. I think it's an actual strength. So I think actually having that that mindset of feeling vulnerable is not a weakness, you know. So I think having friends like you and family and things like that, it helps give you an understanding as well as to what people think about certain situations and maybe how people perceive you and that type of thing. So I think communication's been a big one. I think, as I've touched on when you talked about the gym, just taking accountability for myself. So there does come a point where I think with depression, as much you can, you know, ask for help or speak to people, things like that. I think taking accountability for yourself is key. So only you can sort of, you know, get yourself out of situations and scenarios. And I think it's very important to look inward at yourself and be accountable.
And was there a particular occasion where you kind of said to yourself, look, I need to hold myself accountable here. I need to sort this out, John. Come on.
I can't think of a particular time, but there's been many conversations with you, obviously Dave, my mum and stuff, where I was kind of going round and round in circles and I wasn't happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's only so many times you can tell me, you know, you'll be all right, or maybe try this, whatever. But at some point, you, like I said, you have to do a bit of self-reflection and think, where do I actually want to go? Who do I want to be? Yeah. If that makes sense.
I guess there's only so many times, there's only so much that loved ones around you can tell you or, you know, talk about things with you, where it comes to a point that you have to say, it's kind of like that. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink the water. And that's the thing. You can have as many people as you want around you, sort of helping you, but ultimately you have to help yourself.
Yeah, so there is a crossroads. I think people reach. So you can either go on a downward spiral, and really hit rock bottom. I mean, I've been in some dark places, but I think there's darker place you can go, or you can get to that point where you think, right, I need to help myself in some way, shape, or form. So that's where things like the gym come into play. I've done my own research. I have. Again, I don't see it as a weakness, but obviously I've been on medication from the doctors, which has helped, but I think that can only help you to a certain point. Because at some point, some people may stay on medication for the rest of their life, but at some point, a lot of people will taper down and come off.
Are you still on any medication?
I've been on medication for years now.
Nice.
But there has to be a point then when you do come off, we think, now what?
How was that transition for you? Just talk a little bit about, because I'm sure there'll be lots of people who are listening that maybe still at the point where they're reliant on the medication. And of course, as we're talking here, we're not condoning or saying to anyone that they should come off their medication. That should be something that they need to discuss with their doctor, of course. But just to get your view, your sort of experience on where you've gone through your journey of being on your medication and then coming through and deciding not to be on your medication anymore, and how did that transition work for you?
It was quite worrying at the time, because obviously I wouldn't say I was reliant on a medication, but they do help in the sense of giving you that boost you need to sort of get your equilibrium right in terms of your mental frame of mind. So it was a bit daunting coming off, but I'd put steps into place, like I said, with the gym, obviously the communication piece, things like that, and obviously a bit of self-reflection work as well. So it was daunting. There's been many ups and downs. Even now I still have ups and downs, but I think at some point you have to realise that people have ups and downs in life as well.
Yeah, I think we all do. I mean, even anyone who doesn't, suffer with any mental health or anything like that, as humans, we all have ups and downs. I think that's a given, isn't it?
Correct, but I just go back to analogy with a shovel. If you've got the depression,
yeah,
if you dwell on things and you look at the negative side of things too much, that shovel you'll be digging a hole so deep you can't get back out, and that's where the depression comes into it, because you can't get out because you're so over-consumed with the negativity instead of looking at the positive side. So just to give you an example, if I looked at myself and I said, well, John, you've done some good work here. You've been to the gym, you went to doctors, you got help, you've spoken to people. I think that would be a lot better than, I can't believe you've got yourself in a state, look you're on the medication, you're obviously not right. And that's where the negative cycle comes in, which you have to try and break.
Yeah, it's the self-talk, isn't it?
The self-talk. And over the years, I've realised that there's like an inner critic within me. Yeah. So I am my own worst critic. I'm a very proud person. And I hold myself to high standards. Probably be a bit too high.
Yeah. Or too harsh on yourself?
Too harsh. I think I've come to realise as well over the years that I'm just a human being. So, we all have ups and downs. We all make mistakes and stuff. But I hold myself in high regard. So if I do something that I don't like within myself, I can be very harsh. And I can dwell on this it could be days, weeks, months, it could be even years, and I'm just going round in a cycle.
Still digging that hole, sort of thing.
Still digging that hole, too overcritical and analysing everything in regards to me and the bad sides and not necessarily the good sides, which is obviously where the whole analogy comes into play.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so just to touch on that, So how have you over the years then managed to be able to change that self-talk from a negativity to a positivity?
Um, it's still a work in progress. I got to be honest.
I think you've definitely come a long way, though. Being a good friend of yours, I would definitely say you've come a really long way.
Yeah, and thanks for that. There's certain things I've had to put in place. I've had to identify my triggers, what to avoid, how to deal with certain situations, how to sort of again reflect if there's anything I could maybe do different, things like that. So things like that have helped, to be honest.
Mm. And what would you say to someone who is perhaps in a place that 20-year-old John was at? If you could sort of give any bit of a key piece of advice right now to someone who may be listening, who's just kind of realised that they're actually suffering with depression themselves, what would be your sort of number one piece of advice that you could give to that person?
Don't be too hard on yourself. Like I said to you, I'm very, very self-critical, way too self-critical. So don't be too hard on yourself. Um, even talking to you or any of my friends, we've all got issues we've had to deal with. It's just how you sort of respond to those issues, which is the big difference. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, I think having a good network of people around you is important as well, isn't it? I mean, again, between me, you, and David, um, whenever we've got a little problem, we always kind of share it with each other and try to, break it down and just make simplicity out of it and go, right, well, you can get through this, and it's having that support around you. So I think definitely getting friends or family that you can count on.
I've been very lucky that I've got good friends and family who are always here for me and have been quite understanding. You've got to remember as well that there's people out there that come from either dysfunctional families. They might not have many close friends around them. So for those type of people, if anyone is on that side of things, there is also things like the Samaritans, things like that that can help. Like I said, I've been very fortunate to have people like you, but people haven't been as lucky as me. So
yeah,
I do feel for those people as well.
Is there any? So you mentioned the Samaritans. Is there any other sort of charities that you know of that people can contact?
I've only ever contacted Samaritans personally myself. In work, I've got like an employee assistance program. But there are many resources out there. Again, we've got the internet these days. But there's many sort of free charities. There's the I think the Salvation Army, things like that as well. Things like that who can help. But yeah, I've been to Samaritans. I'm not afraid to say a couple of times.
How did you find them?
A help. I found it a massive help. I think at one time it was 3:00 in the morning and my mind was in overdrive, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I was quite scary in that frame of mind. I really didn't know what to do with myself and what I was going to do. So just having someone there, they can't give you advice because that's not what they're there to do. But just having that impartial advice, and I think sometimes impartiality does help. Because I think sometimes if I spoke to you or my mum, just say for example, they wouldn't necessarily look at things in a very neutral way. If that makes sense.
Totally. I get it. Yeah.
So speaking to the Samaritans is, given that impartiality and just having someone different to speak to was a massive help.
Yeah. And just to touch on, as you know as well, we lost a good friend of ours just over a year ago now through, mental health problems. And again, think if only he had reached out to, maybe more friends and the Samaritans or some of the charities that were available to him, maybe things might have been a little different. I certainly know from my point of view, I find I've blamed myself a few times for not doing more to try and support him. I know you went to primary school with him, and I was pretty close with him in high school. So if anything, I think it's kind of like a bit of a wake up call that, you know, us doing this, like, you know, exactly what we're doing right now and talking about these issues is massive, so that anyone who is listening can take solace from it, I guess, and know that there are people out there who are willing to listen and to help.
Yeah, I feel I've had a lot of reflection myself in terms of what I could have maybe done. At the same time, though, people do live their lives, you know. So as each day progresses, you know, you don't see people. You don't necessarily look at people's struggles because you're in your own bubble, you're in your own world. But yeah, I felt very saddened by Calford, because obviously, look, he was a mate and I went to school with him. But I can kind of see where his head was at as well, probably at the same time. Now, I spoke to you earlier about the crossroads. So I think obviously Calford, he at some point he hit that crossroads where he thought, what am I going to do? Am I going to turn this around, or is there no way out? Yeah, and unfortunately, he went the different path that I did. Yeah, so he couldn't come out of it. So, you know, look, Stephen had his issues, but you know, he probably didn't have that accountability to look at himself and trying to help himself. The communication piece he probably struggled with. Obviously, you know, I know you sort of beat yourself up about what you could have maybe done, and I think all the boys could have as well. But I think there's that communication piece that was probably missing. He was struggling to be honest and say, look, I need some help.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And, you know, we can't beat ourselves up forever, can we? I mean, it's easy once someone's gone to sort of say, I should have or could have done this differently. But again, going back to the horse and the water and everything, I know there was, you know, quite a few of the boys that, you know, all did give out olive branches. And I think, you know, it was coming a time where he was just like you said with the crossroads, you know, he'd gone past that point of he just didn't want the help anymore.
No, and I think, you know, I'm being quite lucky because, like I said, I've had the structure, I've had the communication, I've had the accountability side of things. Yeah. So, in regards to Calford, you know, I think he lacked that structure as well. So if maybe had a bit of structure in place, then maybe he could have sort of built from there and started to come out. But because he didn't have the structure put in place on a day-by-day basis, because at the end of the day, especially with depression and that side of things, you do have to take it day by day. You have to build on the wins day by day then to sort of get yourself out of it. And I think because he didn't have the structure, unfortunately, then that sort of come into play. And you know, obviously his life was erratic and he couldn't see any way out. So I am, you know, very saddened, and I just wish I could have helped out just as you could, you know. But you can't change the past, you know.
No, we've you know, that is important, that we can only move forward. You know, we can remember the past, but we can't change the past. And you know, moving in a forward motion is all we can do to, you know, and strive to learn from any mistakes we've made in the past.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about what DJing does for you then. So, you know, we've talked about the gym and how that has massively helped your mental health. I remember the days when we were sat in my bedroom and we were thinking of DJ names, and I still swear now that I was the one who came up with the J-Tech DJ name. So I just want to put that out there, I'm taking that one.
Also, I'd like to put a disclaimer in, when I am rich and famous, he's not having a penny. But yeah, the DJing, I mean, what can I say about the DJing? You know, obviously it was just a hobby back in the day. I never thought I'd play in clubs or anything like that. It was just something I just loved to do. But, you know, when you're kind of, you know, playing for an hour, a 2 hour, you're just in a different world. You've got no stresses, you've got no issues, you're just there in the moment, you know. And I think that's the present thing is the biggie. You're just there in the moment, and you just you know, you're just playing your tunes, and it gives you that happiness. It might take you back. So if I play like an old tune, just say for example, from 20 years ago, it might take me back to a certain place. They're all happy moments. I'd never relate the music I play to like a
A bad memory.
A bad memory or unhappy memory. They're all good memories. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just love it. I've met some great DJs and some great friends along the way. I think this is my 22nd year now that I've been playing in some way, shape or form. I still love it just as much now as I did back in the day. It just gives me that release of any negativity, and it just takes me, to another world, if you want to call it that.
So would you say it's important for anyone who does struggle with some sort of mental health to find hobbies and interests that they can put their hands to or their mind to allow them to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Hobbies are massive. It's just getting that purpose. So you've got to find a purpose in life. I think it's quite crucial, really, just to give you a bit of direction where you're going. So any form of hobby. It could be whatever you love to do. If you don't know what you love to do, I think it's just quite important to maybe start somewhere.
Yeah, just get out there.
Just find out what you actually enjoy doing. But it just gives you that belief, that kind of confidence within yourself, really, to sort of push on and sort of grow as a person and that type of thing. So it's really, really important, I think, to find a hobby. Otherwise, I think you can be quite lost in your direction in life.
Yeah, totally. Just want to talk a little bit about so your work as well. You've become pretty successful. We actually, this is how long we've been friends. We've worked in McDonald's together.
Yep.
We've worked in Adler together selling pens.
Yep.
And back in Adler, I was terrible at selling, but you seem to absolutely smash the sales, and you were, a really good salesman. From a mindset point of view, again, with everything that you've had to deal with in life and what have you, what was your motivation around sort of sales? And then, how have you progressed to where you're at now, where you're now you're a team manager and, quite high up?
Let me tell you this. So when I first started sales, I never thought of myself as a salesman. Thought I was terrible. So I lacked the confidence back in the day. I wasn't that confident really speaking to people when I first started sales. But as I've gone through my journey of life, I found a lot more self-belief, a lot more confidence in myself, which obviously helps within sales. You've got to be a good listener, yeah, and you've got to be confident on the phone in terms of what you're selling. So yeah, as I've gone through my career, I never thought I would end up sort of being a manager. I didn't actually apply for the job. My manager actually asked me to be the manager of the team, which I found a massive motivation boost, if you want to call it that. But they obviously saw something within me. And I think it's, I just, again, as I've gone through my life, I quite enjoy listening to people, helping people. I like motivating people. So I think it's quite rewarding at the same time. Because I've sort of like built the motivation within myself. And I don't think some people have that drive necessarily. But I think the only reason I've got that drive is through my actual journey.
Yeah.
To succeed, in life, if you want to call it that, yeah. So I find it quite rewarding to motivate people. You probably know at times it can be quite outspoken.
Yeah.
But again, that comes from the communication piece. I've learned to communicate well, I think, and speak from the heart. And I think, I don't like to leave anything left unsaid if you want quite an open book. And I think people do appreciate that in the long run. They might not like it in the first instance, but I think people respect that at the same time. So I think that's where it's kind of got me to and where I am now.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit earlier about you now being a leader and whether you're a natural born leader or what have you. Do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you asked me 20 years ago, if you spoke to 20-year-old John, I'd never never put myself as a leader. I was very inconfident then. I wouldn't say I was needy, but I was always looking for acceptance, if you want to call it that. Yeah. I didn't have that belief within me. Um, so yeah, as the sort of years has progressed, it's just completely changed, really.
Yeah. And so, for anyone who's listening again, who would maybe, aspiring to try and move up through the ladder again, in one sort of word, what would you say needs to be done to move up that ladder?
Confidence within yourself. It's a belief. It's a mindset shift. So if you're in a negative mind frame and you're struggling and you think, I could never achieve what I want to achieve, it's that change around in mindset of belief in your, within yourself, you know.
Yeah, and just obviously got touching on what you said about helping people and you like to motivate people and everything. I know you've done some videos not so long ago on Facebook. I think, how many did you do? Was it 4 or 6?
About five maybe six.
Where you touched on various different topics based around depression and mental health. What was your reasonings behind doing that?
I think, especially when it comes to depression, mental health, I think it's still quite taboo. I know there's people out there who are struggling, and I thought it was time for me to step up. Again, I'm not an expert, just from my experience in trying to help people and feel comfortable in looking at me, speaking about my issues and thinking there's nothing wrong with it, if that makes sense. So I wanted to sort of get people that confidence, if they are struggling, to feel comfortable within themselves and not look at themselves negatively. Speak out to people, try and just give them some things that have helped me in my past to try and maybe speed up the journey, because mine was quite a long process to sort of get out of the hole that I was in. And I didn't want people to suffer, because again, you've got the shovel in your hands. It can go on for quite a long time when you're digging that hole. So I just wanted to sort of just end the negativity towards depression and the whole mindset of what people think of it. There's nothing wrong with it. We all have our ups and downs. Just trying to get people out of the downs as quick as possible to get out the other side. And that was the whole reason for me doing it, is to try and end the whole stigma and the whole taboo around depression and mental health.
Yeah, and massive respect to you for doing that, because it's so, for people to talk about their issues like you did and be able to wear your heart on your sleeve and say, look, this was me, this was my experiences, and I'm going to talk about them. That's massive kudos to you, because there's not many people who would do that to help other people.
No, and I think it comes back to what I said earlier about the vulnerability side of things, especially men. No one likes to sort of put themselves out there as vulnerable. But I think once you put yourself out there as vulnerable, people do see that as a strength.
Yeah.
That you're willing to show your vulnerability. So yeah, I just got to the point I thought, I just don't care. In regards to people's opinions. Again, when I come back to the whole thing about acceptance of people and maybe sort of like trying to change my personality to fit in with people, I think you have to come to the point where you believe in yourself and who you are and where you want to go, because everyone's life is different and the journey is different. Obviously they might need help. Obviously people like yourselves in terms of life coaching, things like that, are a massive part of the journey for a lot of people. But I think it was just the whole vulnerability side of things. I think I just want to put that out there. It's okay to be vulnerable at the same time.
Yeah, we've used the word journey quite a lot, haven't we, in the show? And I think that is quite the pinnacle, really, of what we're talking about. Is everyone has their own journey, and whilst yes, your experiences I can guarantee people who are listening are going to relate to things and will hopefully will adopt certain things that you've talked about to help themselves, but ultimately it's their journey, and they have to find along their journey what it is that can help them to get better, if you like.
Absolutely, and that's where it comes down to things like hobbies and purpose. You've got to have a purpose. So you start at A, but you've got to have that end goal in regards to where you want to be. So it's sort of trying to sort of find where you want to go, what you want to do in your life, yeah. And obviously hobbies, things like that, purpose and ambition, all that type of thing comes into it, yeah. But the one thing I will say about the journey is no journey is linear.
No.
In anyone's journey, it's not
Close.
just a straight path.
No.
There's going to be many ups and downs, trials and tribulations in regards to getting where you want to be. But it's quite important, obviously, when it comes to mental health, when the downs do come, that you don't let them escalate to the pit of despair. You've got to take the rough for the smooth. I think you've got to objectively sort of look at where your issues might be. Again, I talked about triggers, find out what triggers might be, things like that, yeah. Try and navigate triggers. But, you know, once you've got that ultimate drive and ambition and purpose of where you want to be, I think that's what sort of does get you to sort of succeed and progress, if that makes sense. So you've got to look at the end goal of where you want to be.
Yeah.
And not be, again, I touched on it earlier, not be too hard on yourself. You can be your own worst critic.
Yeah.
If you do suffer with depression, and just, again, not be too hard on yourself. Not live in the past. You can learn from the past, but don't live in the past, because that will hinder your life. You know, you could take years out of your life if you look at the past all the time and you look at yourself negative on a negative, you know, mind frame. So I think it's important to learn from the past, but live in the present.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely live in the present, live day by day. And yeah, just get where you want to go. Nice.
Okay, and so what does the future hold for you, John? Where do you see yourself in, say, I don't know, 5 years' time? What's on the horizon?
In terms of my routine, that's never going to change. In terms of my routine, yeah, that's what sets me the standards. Yeah. Within work, I would like to go higher. Obviously, I'm a manager of a team. I'd like to progress within my own company. You know, I've got, maybe not in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, I'd maybe like to buy another house, maybe. So I've got, you know, we are getting on a bit now, Chad. Yes, I am thinking of security, things like that. Would like to maybe get another house, things like that. So there are things in play where I want to sort of better myself. Because I've got another 27 years of the rat race at the moment. So I think it's important to sort of, you know, give myself that financial stability, whether it be in property or bet myself within work, things like that. One thing I will say as well, if anyone does want to book a 45 or 46-year-old DJ in 5 years' time, give me a shout, yeah?
When would you say as well then that by having these future goals that you've just talked about, that again they're important to keep you, you know, your journey moving forward?
Absolutely. I mean, again, you've got to sort of have that purpose, direction, and drive to keep you moving forward. The one thing I will say is don't make your dreams. I know people say dream big, which is really important to dream big. But you've got to try and break down things into bite-sized chunks at the same time. So if you
baby steps,
but you've got to have a focus in kind of bite-sized chunks. Because if you dream big and you think, right, I'm gonna get there, and then you have a few setbacks along the way, then you're gonna be deflated.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So just say, for example, you know, my small goal at the moment is try and get my debts down. Yeah, in the next two years, get my debts down. Yeah, so I'm debt free. Yes, that's a small, manageable, realistic goal I can kind of achieve. Yeah, and then I can maybe look into saving the money, putting the money aside for deposit. Hopefully, I would have progressed in my job. Just say, for example, if my boss is listening to this, give me a nice pay rise. But these type of things then kind of help to the bigger picture. We've got to try and break it down into bite-sized chunks to try and get you to where you want to be.
Cool. Okay, and we're just going to wrap it up. So at this stage of the show now, what I'm going to be doing with all guests going forward, so to wrap it up, we're going to do the Ask the Host. So this is your chance now to ask me anything. put a question to me.
Um, with this podcast, how is it? How is it? Um, has it changed your perception in terms of mental health?
This particular show,
Yeah, and how we've spoken about it.
uh, y- yes and no. I mean, a lot of it, I've, I don't, I've never had any sort of depression or mental health myself, but a lot of my family around me, my close ones, um, suffer with mental health. This is why, doing this show and raising their awareness around mental health is so important to me, especially losing Calvert a year ago. My wife suffered with postnatal depression. She's like you, she's not on tablets anymore. But I've lived with that, so I know the other side. So from my side of it, it's kind of when when my wife's suffering with depression, you get that feeling of, oh, is it me? Is there something I'm doing wrong that's triggered her to be like this? Does she love me? Because of course. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes. It has. Because the analogy you used about the shovel in your hand, I think is gold, because that does make me understand now in the times where I've kind of thought, does my wife love me because she's very distant, but in actual fact she's being distant because she's dealing with her issues that she's got right at that particular moment. So yeah, this chatting to yourself and hearing your insights has definitely brought things to light to me. But like I said, also I've lived through it as what would you call it? Someone looking from the outside. So I am well aware of how bad it can be for people who do suffer with mental health.
Yeah, the last thing I'll kind of touch on, you got off quite lightly with the questions, to be honest. The one thing I'll kind of leave on is a byproduct of depression. It can make you quite selfish, because obviously you're quite focused on you and where you're at and your headspace. So the one thing I will say, if anyone's listening to this who's trying to support someone with mental health issues, I think you are quite right in regards to, is it me? But don't be too, don't take it to heart too much. Obviously, look, it's important for partners to open up and families to open up. But it's, like I said, it's a byproduct of depression. It can make you quite selfish in you, and it's all about you and your issues. You're not really thinking about other people. So I think, if anyone is on the other side trying to help someone with depression, obviously support, things like that, but try and keep the communication lines open and maybe be quite gentle. And sometimes don't be too reflective on yourself in regards to, is it me? What can I do? And things like that, because unfortunately some people can be quite selfish with their needs.
I gotta be honest, there has been times I found it quite difficult to know what to do to be able to support my wife. I mean, it's kind of like, do I give her a hug? And I know over the years I've come to realize that that's not what she's wanted. So you kind of, I keep my distance, and then I feel as though by me keeping my distance too much, is that doing any good? You can't. From my point of view, you kind of end up feeling a bit useless, really, where you want to do something to help, but you don't really know what it is that you can do to help, apart from obviously talking.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, again, when people who suffer with depression or what have you, they don't really want to talk about it.
No, and it's going to be, look, everyone's different. My journey's my own. Everyone's got their own journey. People will suffer with depression in different ways as well. So, yeah, look, it can be quite difficult in regards to support. Some people are quite introverted, don't want to speak. Some people will lash out. They might smash up the house or whatever it might be, in terms of the frustration and whatever it might be. So it can be quite difficult. But I think sometimes it can be quite, it's quite difficult not to be too hard on yourself if you're trying to support someone. Yeah, all you can try and do is, like I said, try and keep the support.
It's just what I come to realize over the years is it's just about constantly being there. So it's about consistency. So her knowing that regardless, I am here. Same with, like I say, my brother as well, my mother. There's quite a lot of people around me, loved ones, yourself, who I've witnessed it from the other side. And as much as I really don't know or can never understand what it is like to go through that, at the same time, it is difficult as well for the other side to be able to know what to do to give that help. But like I say, I think the most important thing that I've realised is just allowing those loved ones to know that you're consistent and you're there for them.
Absolutely. One last question: What do you get out? What do you get out of things like these podcasts, things like that? What sort of reward do you get in yourself?
For me, and this is like my prime directive of this podcast, is as you know, I've trained now in neuro-linguistic programming, which means I can help reprogram people's mindsets to allow them to get things out of life which they perhaps before wasn't getting or achieving in life. And it's become a real passion of mine, so it almost feels like everything I've done leading up to now I'm trained in NLP, has been kind of like the journey, but it's as if I've always had this ability to help people, to help make a change and a difference in people's lives for the better, without, even before doing that training. But now I've done that training, it's kind of reinforced and given me that belief in myself that I absolutely can go out there and make a difference in people's lives. And this podcast show is kind of that extension of it. So by being able to talk like this and for people to listen, it just allows us to touch on lots of different issues that people may experience. And like I say, if I can help just through us talking and people can relate to it and it can help them, then that is a win in my eyes.
And it all comes down to that purpose, that drive.
Definitely.
We were talking about earlier,
yeah. That is my purpose now. That is my passion, my motivation, and my drive is to help as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah, and obviously you've got your purpose, but if anyone's listening to this who are struggling, make sure you find your own purpose and sort of help yourself out.
Definitely. There we are. Okay, guys, I think we'll wrap it up there. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in and listening. As I've said, please follow the show. By getting more followers, it allows us to get more guests on, especially gold guests like John, who we've just had. You can also find us on TikTok at Find Your Mind, Instagram at MindFindNLP, and Facebook MindFindNLP. So see you on the next one, guys. Thank you.